I'm going to tell you 11 huge personal injury claim mistakes that may result in you getting a smaller settlement. If you avoid these mistakes, you may get a much faster and larger settlement. The first mistake is not realizing that insurance companies have access to your past claims, all of them. They subscribe to the ISO, which shows them every claim you've made. So don't try to hide past claims from the insurance adjuster. One of the reasons why insurance adjusters ask you for your date of birth, your address, and your full name is so they can run a claim search on you and see all of your past claims. The second mistake that can cause you to get a smaller settlement is to make a demand for a specific amount. The best practice is to ask for a fair offer. Let the insurance company make the first move. Their offer might even surprise you. It might be much higher than you thought it would be. The only time that I recommend demanding a certain amount to settle for is if the other party has a limited amount of insurance and your injuries are worth more than that amount. In that case, you may be better off asking for a certain amount, which would be the policy limits. The problem for making a demand that is too low is that's going to be the most you can get. In your case, typically, the insurance adjuster is going to mark their file as you offering to settle for a certain amount, and don't expect them to ever offer more than the amount. The one exception would be is if your injuries worsen significantly and, for example, you get surgery or something like that, they may offer you more than the amount that you previously requested. But I believe in most cases it's best to ask them to make the first offer and ask for a fair amount. The third mistake that will hurt your settlement is if you fall into the insurance adjuster's traps. I conducted a poll on my YouTube channel and most of you got it wrong. I also know this because I see the mistakes that my clients would make if they didn't have an attorney. I asked the following to my YouTube community. I said, if the adjuster said, if I can settle for X amount, let's say $75,000 for example, what would your response be? And 79% of my community got it wrong. The best response, if an insurance adjuster says, if I can settle for X amount, let's say $75,000 for example, the best response is to follow up with the adjuster and say, do you have authority to offer me that amount now? Throughout the entire claim, you want the adjuster to make the highest offer in writing. So every time they make you an offer, get them to put it in writing. Now, 41% of the people that responded to this question said that they would tell the adjuster they wanted to think about it and they'd call the adjuster back. The problem with that is it makes the adjuster think you might be willing to take their $75,000 offer or whatever amount they're offering. Keep in mind that in most personal injury claims, negotiations take some time. The insurance adjuster will often like to make several settlement moves. So maybe they'll settle the case by making 5 moves, 6 moves, 7 moves, 8 counter offers. It's not just one offer typically, or 2 offers, or even 3 offers. Another benefit of getting the adjuster to put the offer in writing is because sometimes insurance companies switch the adjuster that is assigned to the claim. And once it's part of the claims file in writing, they can't deny that they made that offer. Another mistake when negotiating with insurance adjusters is wanting to believe the insurance adjuster. Look, most insurance adjusters are nice people. They're sweet. They're going to be friendly to you. And it's human nature to want to believe what they're telling you. However, you got to remember this. For every dollar the insurance company saves, it's a less dollar in your pocket. Look at it this way. Negotiating a personal injury claim is like playing poker. You don't always tell the other side what your hand is. Sometimes you bluff. In fact, in personal injury claims, most of the time, if not all the time, the insurance adjuster is bluffing. Another trap when negotiating with an insurance adjuster is if they ask you, what settlement range would you be willing to accept? If you tell them, for example, I'd take anywhere between $75,000 and $100,000, they're going to mark down the lower end of the range always, which is $75,000. And you're never going to get a penny more than that. And likely they're going to try to squeeze you and pay you for a lot less than $75,000. Another adjuster negotiating trick is they will ask you, will you settle for a number that doesn't have a 2 in front of it? Meaning, let's say your case is worth $240,000. They may ask you, will you settle for a number that doesn't have a 2 in front of it? Implying that, would you settle for a number for $199,000 or less? Let me give you an example from a trip and fall case, although it applies to all personal injury cases. After we had made offers and counteroffers with the insurance adjuster, he offered $150,000 and he asked me, would your client accept an amount of money that did not have a 2 in front of it? He's implying, would my client accept any amount for $199,999 or less? Now, if I would have said yes, he would have marked that down in his file and likely would have offered a lot less than $199,000 because he knew we would take that amount. Or maybe at best, he'd offer $199,999. Now, in this case, even though my client may have been willing to take the $150,000, and she probably was, I valued the case somewhere around the $240,000 range, so I told the adjuster, no, we will not settle this case for anything with less than a 2 in front of it. So in this case, rather than me allowing the insurance adjuster to control the negotiation, I made a counteroffer which was way above the $200,000 that he was trying to pin me into. Mistake number 4 that often results in smaller personal injury settlements is not giving the adjuster what they ask you for. In one case, the adjuster asked me for a surgical estimate. In that case, the doctor said my client may need surgery to his leg. The insurance adjuster was offering around $15,000 when she asked me to give her an estimate of the surgery costs. Shortly after I gave her the estimate of surgery costs, they increased their offer to over $84,000. So pay close attention to what the insurance adjuster asks you for. Now, just because the insurance adjuster asks you for something, that doesn't mean you are required to give it to them. In fact, it may even hurt your case. For example, if another driver causes your injury or you slip and trip and fall somewhere, they may ask you for a recorded statement, but if it's the other person's insurance company, you generally are not required to give a recorded statement. Mistake number 5 that can hurt your personal injury settlement amount is being rude to the adjuster. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is business. You don't have to kiss their butt. You don't have to become their friends. And I agree with you. However, you generally want to be nice. These adjusters have 100+ files at any time, and you want to be remembered as someone who's being nice with them. I'm not saying to fold over and do whatever they ask. However, be assertive, be firm, accept whatever amount you're going to take, set your limit, file a lawsuit if you have to, do all of that. However, be nice to them. Understand this claim is not personal. It is just one of their many files. Yelling at an insurance adjuster is not going to get you more money. That being said, there's times where I've had to raise my voice to an insurance adjuster to tell them that I was serious about my point. Mistake number 6 that can hurt your personal injury settlement amount is thinking that when you're telling the insurance adjuster that you're in pain, that this is going to get you more money. What ultimately matters is the pain that is reflected in your medical records. Medical records are the heart of your personal injury case. If it's not in the records, it does not matter. I don't care how much you're telling the insurance adjuster, I have pain in my back, I have pain in my knee. If you're telling him or her this, and yet he looks at your medical records and he doesn't see any complaints of pain in your back or your knee or wherever you're complaining of pain, or if you're not going to the doctor, it's meaningless to the insurance adjuster. Mistake number 8 that will likely result in you getting a smaller personal injury settlement is if you don't tell the doctor the cause of your accident. I've had clients who go to the doctor and on the intake form, it doesn't ask them if they were in a car accident or slip, trip, and fall, and they never mention the type of accident to the doctor. That may be a problem if the insurance company is challenging that the accident caused your injury. Now, it's less of a problem if shortly after the crash you took an ambulance to the hospital, then that initial visit was documented there. But if you didn't take an ambulance to the hospital and you're going to the doctor 5 days, 7 days, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks later, and you don't tell them you were in an accident, it can pose a problem because the insurance company is going to say that your injury was not caused by the accident. It's always better if your accident is reported to the doctor or hospital the first time. It's much better than having to try to correct your medical records later. Now, mistake number 9 mainly can delay the time that it takes to settle. That would be if you don't give your proper insurances to the hospital or doctor after you go there. If you were involved in an accident, you should give your auto insurance and your health insurance to the doctor or hospital. Otherwise, you're going to be ready for settlement and you may have to pay back your health insurance company, but you may not even know how much your health insurance company paid for your medical bills because they were never billed by the hospital because you never gave it to them. Give your auto and health insurance to the hospital and doctors from day one. It's going to get the ball moving and allow your case to settle as soon as possible. It's also going to allow you to know as soon as possible how much you're going to have to pay back your health insurance or maybe your auto insurance company from the settlement. And that way you can know the bottom line in your settlement. Also, if you don't give your health insurance or auto insurance to the hospital or doctors within a certain amount of time, it may be too late. And by law, the health or auto insurance may not have to pay the hospital or doctor. Mistake number 10 is waiting to request your medical records, bills, and other documents. As soon as you leave that hospital, you should be requesting your medical records. Your medical records from the hospital are going to be different from the discharge papers that they give you when you leave the hospital. That is a very short summary of telling you what to do, and it's going to state the type of injury. But your medical records are going to talk about the level of pain that you have. They're going to talk in specific about how the accident happened and other important information. Likewise, request your medical bills as soon as you can. Anytime you have a major medical visit or MRI, get those medical records and bills and then keep feeding them to the insurance company. You want to be top of mind for the insurance company. You want the adjuster to know your file, but more importantly, you want to give them proof of your medical bills and medical records, which can help them ask their supervisor for the proper amount of settlement authority to resolve your case. Your goal is to get fair value for your personal injury claim. The only way that can happen fast is if you're feeding the insurance company with your medical records and bills and other documentation as fast as possible. Get out to the scene, take photos of the scene if that's important in your case. You may need to request to the police department that they preserve all body cam footage of the incident because that disappears sometimes after 60 days or so. You may want to ask the 911 center to preserve the 911 call because that may talk about how the accident happened. You can actually use that against the other driver or at-fault party. In one case that I settled for $350,000, in the 911 call, you could hear the driver saying, "I hit him on a bike."
I was driving and I hit a man. Well, he was on a bike.
And that 911 call was helpful in getting that $350,000 settlement for my client's broken ankle and surgeries. Mistake number 11, if you're seriously injured from an accident that someone else is at fault, is to at least get a consult with a personal injury lawyer. I'm not telling you automatically in every case to hire a personal injury lawyer. You don't need to. However, at the least, if you're seriously injured, talk to a personal injury attorney. Ask them what benefit they can do for you that you can't do on your own. As you can see from these 11 mistakes, there's a tremendous amount that an attorney knows that you don't. I'm just skimming the surface and giving you a sliver of the amount of information that's in my brain. And in order to get the largest personal injury settlement, it's not about how smart you are. I'm sure a lot of you are smarter than me. It's about the experience level that you have. All these mistakes I've learned over time. When I started practicing as a personal injury lawyer 18 years ago, I probably didn't know any of these mistakes, but I learned them. Avoiding these mistakes is important in a personal injury claim, but you know what's more important that may help you get a larger settlement is knowing the questions to ask an insurance adjuster. Watch this video here to learn these questions, and if you're seriously injured in the state of Florida or on a cruise and you're considering hiring an attorney, fill out the contact form in the link below, and I'll see you next time.